Starting again, the obeisances are on the other little tiny one. We're going to continue hearing from the book called The Holy Dust of Braj, Discourses on Sri Kesava Vrata and Chandan Yatra. So yesterday, we had read about the manifestation of Sri Kesava Dev in Braj, and we heard this history of Krishna's great-grandson, Vajranab, right? Maharaj Vajranab, who was very much appreciative of the Vrindavan pastimes, but by the time that he had appeared and taken his role, Vrindavan had gone back to forest, right? Krishna and all his associates had left, and already things were being forgotten, right? Because Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan were not so much understood anyway, except by some sages, some great souls, and some devotees here and there. But remember, the devotees of Dwarka had also disappeared. Krishna had left with his associates. And now Vrindavan became aprakat, unmanifest. The pastimes in Leela is always going on, but they're not visible to ordinary people's eyes. So now it had become forgotten, and Vajranab wanted to establish deities, ghats, places of remembrance of the different pastimes. And so the first thing they did was establish Harideva, right? The deity of Govardhan. And Uddhava was also there. Uddhava and Vajranab working together. We heard about all that, and then we also heard about Krishna having given both Uddhava and his grandson some instruction about Giriraj Govardhan and his essential role in providing strength and illumination in the practice of bhakti. And then also the special place of Manasi Ganga, which is at the base of Giriraj Govardhan. So we heard all that. And that we heard that by worshiping these places and praying to them, then these places, which are actually persons, everything is a person, everything is conscious. Anything that's animate that we see, anything that has form, that grows, that reproduces, right? It's all based on consciousness. Dull matter does not act except under the influence of consciousness. So, after that installation, Manasi Ganga, Harideva, we take up again the reading. Upon receiving darshan of the deity of Harideva, Vajranab and Uddhava began serving Harideva, and slowly their sambandha with him awakened. That's an important statement. They're serving Harideva, this deity in Govardhan, and sambandha awakened. When we do deity worship, an extraordinary thing happens. Even in the simplest of household worship, when you worship the deity, a relationship awakens in your heart. You see the deity in different ways. You get a sense of reciprocation, and even more, the deity begins to reveal his beauty, her beauty. It's extraordinary, but in our own history, when we would visit so many different temples, all the deities under Srila Prabhupada's direction were always taken care of so nicely. And everywhere you went, when you did traveling Sankirtan, the devotees at that temple were convinced our deities are the most beautiful in the world. Yeah. Right? Why? Because they're showing themselves to you in ways that others who are visiting or have not served them may not have awakened to. Right? And you go there and you say, oh yeah, there's Kishore in Chicago, they're definitely very beautiful. But they're not as beautiful as our Radha Govinda. Even though they're the same, right? And everywhere you went, it was like that. But then if you stayed in a place for some time, then gradually your relationship, because you're doing seva, with those deities begins to awaken, and they become even more beautiful. They reveal themselves. And there are so many stories. We were just looking at a picture yesterday that had been taken in 1974 in New York from our Radha Govinda. And it was a picture taken one winter when we were feeding the deities these great big ladus made with fried chickpeas, honey, toasted nuts, almonds, cashews, figs, apricots. You've never had a sweet like that in your life. We would also make them and distribute them. But if you went on Sankirtan and you did a certain amount, you got one this big for yourself. And I know I only did a half a day of Sankirtan because I had other duties in the morning, but I got a lot of those. I was motivated. But one day they offered, you could have the Ladu or you could have this big or this beautiful picture of Radha Govinda. And I said, I want the picture. And that's the one, you know. But if you look at Radharani, you see her cheeks are really big. They're fat. Because all winter long, she was being fed these. And she grew. I mean, you can see it in different pictures, you know, and she's, you know, slender and childish looking and then big puffy cheeks. And early on, the devotees in Detroit had deities also. And they wrote to Srila Prabhupada and said, Detroit was known for very opulent prasad. They had very opulent prasadam, even by ISKCON standards. And they said something that the deities' clothes don't fit anymore. You know, we have to expand them. And Srila Prabhupada wrote back and said, oh, you're feeding them very nicely, and they're gaining weight. And that's just a way they would reciprocate. Undeniable. Message from Jug Mohan. Okay. So they're developing a relationship with Bhajanav. They realized, what is Braj? Who are the Braj Basis? What is the dust of Braj? That's important. When you go to Vrindavan, you can go like a tourist and just go here, go there, take pictures, take selfies. Oh, here's me at Giriraj, here's me here. Oh, look, there's a Sankirtan party that I'm walking along with, but I'm going to take a picture of the Sankirtan party from a distance. You know, oh, how great. You won't get any too much from that. You'll get enormous sukriti just being there, but bhakti comes from seva, right? Bhakti comes from bhakti. Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya, right? The more you invest in the mood of service, the more you get reciprocation. So, by the influence of Ganga Devi and Haridev, Vajranabh's heart overflowed with happiness, and he started glorifying all the Braj Basis. He prayed to serve them. How can I serve the Braj Basis? How can I become one of them? He thought, as long as this seva vritti is not present, seva vritti means the tendency, the inclination, the eagerness to serve, is not present, this tendency to serve, then one's sambandha will not become fixed. Naturally, we will serve those whom we love, in whom we have faith. We will worship them and strive to make them happy. The Brajbasis continuously arrange to make Krishna happy, and in order to make the Brajbasis happy, we ourselves need to serve. So sometimes we think service means, I'm going to serve the deities, but I don't get along with the devotees, right? Or I'll serve this one, but I won't serve that one. The idea of service, there's a nice story in the Jaiva Dharma when Babaji Maharaj is giving instruction, trying to show the maturation of that service mood coupled with humility. Because if you don't have humility, you really can't embrace the idea of service. Why should I serve him? Who's that person? You label them based on some designation or other, or whatever it might be. We tend to minimize others. But the more we become humble, then the more we detect whatever quality of devotion they have, however minute, we see that and we glorify that. And this is what Srila Srila Prabhupada had when he came. He had this group of followers that, so unqualified in every way, by habits, by lack of education, by lack of culture. But they had one thing: they developed faith in him by hearing, right? And by his exhibition of extraordinary Vaishnava qualities. Those can't help but touch the heart of another person. Humility can move mountains. And so he tells the story of a king. He was the king of the world. He had power over all these other kings. And that's a difficult position, because the other kings are going to be envious of you. They're going to see you as an enemy. They may accept subjugation, but because you're more powerful than them. But they'll hold a grudge, because kings are very ambitious. So he renounced it all. And then he took up the life of a renunciate. And in India, the traditional life of the renunciate, during that kind of culture, favorable culture, was that you would live simply by begging. And you would only beg a little bit, whatever you needed for that day. But this king, he went into the city of his enemies and begged. He had this mentality. And he was so humble, because he no longer identified as a king. I'm a servant of God, and these are all jiva souls. And I'm just serving, depending on the Lord, for my maintenance, for my protection. Whatever comes, comes. There was another story about this man who wanted to take shelter. He had been a very stingy businessman his whole life. And the townspeople didn't like him at all, because he would cheat everybody, and he was very harsh in nature. But circumstances changed, and he developed some faith and desire to become a sadhu and to take initiation from one very famous sadhu. And the sadhu said, yes, I'll give you initiation. But you have to practice for 1 year. So he did, and after 1 year, he come back to me, and he came back, and he said, okay, now go bathe in the Ganga, and then put on clean cloth, and come back for initiation. Now your mind will be purified and will be ready. So while he was doing that, the sadhu approached the street sweeper and said, when he comes, throw dust on him and dirt, sweep onto him as if by accident. And so the guy comes back all clean, all proud. Now I'm going to take initiation. I'll be a disciple of so-and-so. And there's a certain prestige. People want to gain their own prestige by being connected with this sadhu or that sadhu, right? If you go to India today and you tell people, I'm a disciple of Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, so many of them will touch your feet, right? And so there can be a lot of pratishta, pride, reputation from that. But that's not what you want. Anyway, so he's coming back, and sweeper sweeps on him. And he goes, what have you done? I was about to take initiation, and now you've ruined everything. He was really angry. And Guru sees this, he says, no, you're not ready for initiation. You have too much anger. Right? And he's come back next year. Continue to do your bhajan, come back next year. So he did that, came back next year. And the test increased. The degree of the offense or disturbance was stronger, right? And he became angry again, and this happened again and again. 3 years. I'm condensing the story a little bit. Finally, after gathering himself and doing 3 years of sadhana, very determined now, he was becoming purified, and he was following the instructions, and he was consciously trying to cultivate humility. It wasn't easy. And there are many obstacles, and the Guru made sure that people were mistreating him in order to, test him, but also in that test, give him opportunity to realize, in our heart, these things exist, and they're very hard to uproot. the most difficult thing to uproot in the heart of all anarthas, of all obstacles, aside from lust, greed, anger, and everything else, desire for reputation, desire for respect, right? And that's the last obstacle to humility, and humility is the qualification for actual chanting constantly in the proper state of mind. And finally, after all of that, I think the guy took a stool from the street and dumped it on his head. And he just bowed his head and said, "Oh, you're my well-wisher, you know. You are showing me, my faults." And the Guru saw that, and he accepted him and embraced him. So it's not easy. Not easy at all. But these are the stories we get to, and there are many, many stories in Vedic literature about the different tests Guru may give. And, but he's saying, how can I serve the Brajbasis? How can I become one of them? Right? As long as this Kesava Vrata is not present, this tendency to serve, not just the deity, but the service of the deity, right? To have that vision. And not even just the service of the deity, but all jivas, right? To be the well-wisher of all jivas. I remember when we were on a morning walk one time in New Braj, and every morning we'd take this walk on this long road, and there was these big fields with cows in them. Cows meant to be eaten. And we had one sannyasi there, Ashram Raj. And he had a big, loud voice, very powerful, and he loved Sankirtan. And Srila Narayan Maharaj would say, "Now, go chant to these cows. They're your disciples." And he would chant very loudly, and everybody would chant. And we'd look at those cows and think, those cows are being benedicted. But then one time, Srila Narayan Maharaj said, but not just the cows. The trees, the birds, the grass, all are being benedicted. And it struck me that that's his vision. He's seeing not just humans, not just human jivas, not just the cows who we think are maybe more eligible, but even the grass, even the trees. He wants them all benedicted and uplifted. So, service to all. Mahaprabhu's movement is service to all. Now that doesn't mean that indiscriminately. When we're dealing with human beings, we also have to discriminate. The Madhyamadikari, he will serve according to the condition of that jiva. Right? Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Apeksha. This is in the Bhagavatam. For those, they see the Lord and the Lord's pure devotees, and they worship them with great love. Among their peers, they have Maitri, friendship. And they cultivate friendship and serve each other and have affection for each other. That's very important in a spiritual community, that people constantly cultivate affection, right? It's easy to detect faults and problems in others and the misery others give us. Remember when I was a new devotee, I was given this title, Temple Commander. And so it's my job to make sure that everybody was serving all the time. And so anybody who was even napping, all my new godbrothers who were so tired, and if they were napping, I'd wake them up. "Hey, what are you sleeping? This is nescience," And they'd get so angry at me, and we'd have these big arguments. It was more enforcement and pride in having that power than really the concern for those devotees. If I had really had concern for them, I would go, well, they need that. Let them take some rest so they can serve, right? But we'd have these arguments. It takes a long time to really cultivate the sense of being a genuine well-wisher and how to encourage bhakti with people of all levels. So Maitri, friendship with your peers, and then mercy, kripa, to those who are innocent or ignorant, right? But they're innocent, they're not offenders. And for them we show compassion. Like if you're an older devotee, you show compassion for younger devotees, right? Or compassion for people that are ignorant on the streets, out in the world, that we don't feel ourselves part of, but we're immersed in. Can't deny it. But then there's a class of people who are just envious, and they're critical, they're offenders, and we don't mix with them. And you don't try to convert them because they're unfavorable. If you can somehow or other give them an opportunity for some bhakti sukriti, chanting party. If they hear the chanting party, they'll get bhakti sukriti. And over time, enough bhakti sukriti will mature, and they'll become lifted out of that unfavorable condition. They may even, when they're chanting, they may even say, these Hare Krishnas, I can't stand these Hare Krishnas, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, right? But they're getting great benefit from that. That's Nam Abbas. If you're chanting the name of the Lord, even angrily, even, with the mood of criticism, but you don't understand who Sri Nam is, and you're just doing it out of ignorance, that is Nam Abbas. I can't tell you how many stories of devotees that tell me how when they used to see the chanting parties, they'd run away. Oh, I don't want to get those guys always hit me up trying to give you a magazine or something. But they'd talk about devotees, they'd watch and criticize, and then they try to avoid them, and they'd run this way, and then all of a sudden, turn around, there's a devotee. Oh, you want to take a magazine? And then finally they'd take one, and then one day they come to the temple, and I don't want to buy a book, and then they'd buy a book, and before you know it, you're in the temple. Bhakti Sukriti is very powerful. I know a lot of stories like that. First time I saw the devotees, I looked at them and I said, who are those guys? What a bunch of losers. Because they were really skinny. They just had a bed sheet, like a dhoti kind of thing, not even a shirt, because they were poor. I said, they're just begging. They're these guys, they're not monks. Monks live in the forests and that. They're living in the city begging. And my friend said, oh no, they're Hare Krishnas. They're a real thing. And I said, yeah, Hare Krishnas. All right, maybe. And I turn around and some guy's got a conch shell. Would you like to give a donation to Hare Krishna? Some brand new devotee, right? Very enthusiastic. And I went, okay, I give a quarter. And didn't see him again for a couple years. But then my friend came back with a BTG, and started reading it, couldn't understand a word of it. And then one day he said, I went to this temple, they have this feast, vegetarian. I said, I like to eat. Let's go to that feast. So we went, and it was overwhelming, such a wonderful environment, such a wonderful atmosphere. 4 weeks later, the guy that called them losers was in the temple, Bhakti Sukriti acts quickly. But once we're here, really got to refine it and cultivate this mood of humility and service. So naturally we'll serve those whom we love, in whom we have faith. We'll worship them and strive to make them happy. The Brajbasis continually arrange to make Krishna happy, and in order to make the Brajbasis happy, we ourselves need to serve. We're trying to create a little Dham here, mini Dham. As this realization awakened in Vaishnava's heart, then Giriraj manifested the deity of Govindadev for him. Because Govinda is the predominating deity of Abhideya, the process of serving with bhakti. All right. So that Govindadev, that's the same Govindadev that you can see in Jayapur now. There's another one, a Pratibhu, that has been manifested in Vrindavan. After that, Govindadev was moved, and you can see him in Vrindavan. As this realization awakened in Brajnav's heart, then Giriraj manifested the deity of Govindadev for him, because Govinda is the predominating deity of Abhideya, the process of serving with bhakti. Gopa, Gopi, Gokul, Govindadev increases all their happiness. Krishna was named Govinda. He's always Govinda, but in his Leela, after having defeated Indra, when Indra came to apologize, Indra arranged for Abhishek with milk and river from the heavenly Ganga. And as they were bathing him, the milk from Mother Surabhi and the water Airavata brought from Svarga. And when they bathed him, a heavenly voice resonated in the sky. Govinda, Govinda. So Govinda means one who gives happiness or pleasure or sustains the go. And it means cows, gopis, gopas, Gokul itself, right? That's Govinda. So, Bhajanav was astounded to see the attractive form of Govinda Dev. Really, you are so beautiful, Vajranab told Govinda. My heart is captured by this threefold bending form of yours holding the flute. You're so charming. Vajranab served Sri Govindaji affectionately, and gradually when his relationship with the Brajvasis was fixed, and all types of service tendencies came in his heart, then Giriraj manifested for him the deity of Sri Kesava Dev. There are many, many deities that were manifested. Not all were recovered, but he established deities everywhere. But we heard the other day about Dauji, Madan Mohan, Govinda Dev, Gopinath, Garuda Govinda, if you've ever been there. Sri Rupa Goswami wrote the Keshavastakam in his collection of prayers known as Stavamala. Keshav is the avatari. He is the source of all incarnations. Keshava Diktadasa Vidharupa. Keshav is the source of all the 10 incarnations and 24 incarnations, Guna avatars, Manvan avatars, and Leela avatars. All the avatars have Keshav as the root source or avatari. Okay. So, although Keshav Dev currently resides in Mathura and appears to have a four-handed form, he is indeed there in his form as Brajendra Nandan Bal Gopal. When Srila Gurudev would go to the Keshav Dev temple in Mathura, he saw the deity in a Dvibhuja roop, two-handed form, as Murali Dhari, Krishna holding the flute, was none other than the darling son of Nanda, who was always absorbed in Radha Prem. During Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's visit to Braj Mandal, he danced at the temple of Keshav Dev in Mathura and prayed, Hey Nata, Hey Ramana, Hey Bhuvana Eka Bandhu, Hey Krishna, Hey Chapala, Hey Karunaika Sindhu. There's descriptions of Mahaprabhu chanting in Mathura in that temple. That temple was ultimately torn down, I think by Aurangzeb. It was the second Keshav temple. The first one was manifested in ancient times, and it was so opulent. Jewels embedded in the walls, semi-precious stones as steps, just extraordinary, and it was gigantic and magnificent. And that first giant Mughal Muslim invader, I can't remember his name, but he wrote in his journal, he attacked Mathura like 13 times because it was so wealthy there. And when they attacked that temple and extracted all the wealth and jewels from it, he wrote in his diary that if I had 100 of the most qualified craftsmen in all of India, architects, stonemasons and all, as the head of all this, and who knows how many other laborers, and 1 billion dinars. Dinar, it's like the gold coins, worth a lot, like a $20 gold piece or a rupee from the olden times, and 1 billion of them. And 100 years, I could not have built that temple. That's how opulent it was. We can't imagine. The one Mahaprabhu came, it was rebuilt after some time, and he worshipped there. And the site of it is where that giant mosque is now, right? That giant mosque. We don't know if it's going to be there how long. They tore down the place in Ayodhya. There was an ancient temple of Lord Ram there, and they finally, the Muslims tore it down and used the materials to build their own mosque. Who knows? Maybe in Mathura. So, Keshav Dev takes shelter of the Sakis and Manjaris and is himself serving Srimati Radharani. By receiving this deity, Vajranabh understood Prayojana Tattva, the goal of all bhakti. He wanted to understand the glories of the Braja Devis and especially the glories of Srimati Radharani. So to fulfill this desire of Vajranabh's, Keshav Dev manifested. Vajranabh enthusiastically took full shelter of Sri Keshav Dev. So we'll stop there and continue. I'm trying to make this bite size. I was given these hour lectures, hour and 15, and no one's going to watch that on YouTube. People need 2-minute shorts. These are 35 minutes. These are Prabhupada length lectures. He wouldn't lecture longer than 30, 35 minutes usually, because that was our attention span. All right. So, Hare Krishna.